Hey everyone, welcome to the God Shift podcast. I'm your host, Shayna Rattler. And if you will do me a favor, as you are listening to this episode, I would love if you would take a screenshot. Whether it's a screenshot on your laptop, whether it's a screenshot of your phone, I would love to take a screenshot of the podcast and then post that on Instagram with your biggest takeaway from the episode. And when you do that, if you would tag us at a God Shift, I would really be grateful for that. So, welcome to this episode. I'm excited to introduce my guest to you. So, I am going to read his bio, and then we are going to get into his journey of his God shift. And I'm just excited to see how this unfolds. So, let me read his bio. JD, also known as Danny McCabe, grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, as the middle child of a very large family. From an early age, he was independent and a practical realist. This first-time author began writing his diary as a historical journey of events in the demise of his marriage that evolved quickly and came without context. Danny was encouraged to share this personal and unbelievable voyage in rediscovering himself by the many people who witnessed and heard about his journey firsthand. He is blessed with two beautiful adult children, and he resides in the Charleston, South Carolina area. So welcome. I'm so glad to have you.
Shayna, thank you very much. It's wonderful to speak with you again, and I appreciate you sharing your platform with me. So thank you.
You are so welcome. So if you would, so do you want me to call you JD or do you want me to call you Danny?
JD is perfect. JD is
JD
fine.
is perfect. Okay, JD.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
So yeah, my livelihood is I work in the pharmaceutical industry. I've been in the pharmaceutical industry for 30 years. I'm a national account director with responsibility for hospital contracting. In addition to that, I launched my book. I launched the book, as you just referenced. I launched that in March of 2020. So I'm also, working on that in a fairly full-time fashion. So
That's awesome. So, this whole episode is about a God shift, right? And so my definition of a God shift is anytime you have a disruption in your life, and that disruption, it collides with God's purpose. And ultimately, it moves you into a greater destiny, right? So could you share with the audience a time in your life where you were experiencing a major disruption, whether it was a setback, a disappointment, some form of uncertainty?
Yeah, it was a major disruption, and I didn't. You talk about trash versus treasure, and I I did not hear God's whispers in my marriage. So I had a very happy, stable marriage for 17 years, and then the subtle disruption began, probably in 2010. With accusations of infidelity, accusations of drug addiction, and everything that my now ex-wife was accusing me of doing, she actually was doing. So I failed to hear the whispers from God that there was something that I should have looked into, that there was something I should have addressed earlier, and I did not. So ultimately, the good Lord above would not whisper; He would have to yell at me that it's time to move on, and your marriage is over. So I lay out the entire journey, the entire God shift, in my book, The Third Gift, and the title really is the disruption. So it was God smacking me across the face to let me know that the marriage is over, and He did it in the form of a medical test. Yeah.
What I love is to hear that I'm not alone, because I am not the type of girl that you can whisper at and get my attention. Like, you have to yell at me, you have to slap me, you have to shake me, and I think God knows that, right? So when I had my own personal God shift, it was the same way. Like, there was no way that I would have ever paid attention to the fact that I was being called to ministry had my business not been completely, disrupted, in which, in turn ended up disrupting my life in a financial way as well. So when you think about the disruption of your marriage and the things that were going on with you and your wife, what exactly is it? Well, one, how did God use that to get your attention? And then what is it that you think that He was trying to get you to see or learn? Because obviously on the surface level, we could say, oh, obviously, maybe this was not the person that I should have been in covenant with. But really, how did he use those circumstances to get your attention? And then what do you think he was trying to get you to see or learn?
Well, he used those circumstances to get my attention because I was hanging on to a marriage that was broken. So, in the spring of 2014, not to get into too much detail, but in the spring of 2014, I spent 9 days in a psychiatric facility. All of her projections, all of her gaslighting, um, really caused me to have an emotional breakdown to the point where if I thought about losing my family, I made the comment to a physician that I was not sure what I would do. And he made the interpretation that I was suicidal and
Right.
involuntarily committed me. So that disruption was not enough for me to say, okay, I need to address something. There's something going on her side of the equation. Instead, I continued to look within me to figure out how I may have contributed to the lack of trust in our marriage. So I stayed in the marriage for another 6, 7 months. And ultimately, it was when he finally yelled through a positive STD test that she had that I did not have. She accused me of giving it to her through our attorneys. So we had fast forwarded to separation and sitting down with attorneys. It was then that he finally yelled at me and said, your marriage is over and it's
Wow.
time for you to move on. Because as we headed into mediation, believe it or not, Shayna, I'm sitting in the parking lot before I go into my condominium with my attorney, and she's in another one with her attorney. And there's an attorney going back and forth. I was still in love with her. I loved my family. I loved my family unit. I had invested at that point, 20 some years in this woman.
Mhm.
And I wasn't quite ready to move on until
Right.
the man above said, no, it's time to go.
And how did this God shift? How did it deepen your relationship with God or deepen your faith?
Yeah, I've always been a man of strong faith. But it was the faith. It was the good Lord absolutely saved my life. And it was my faith that enabled me to get through really a very, very dark journey. There was 4 or 5 very dark years. But I quickly had to make the shift from questioning why. Some people, when they face adversity and challenges and death and what have you, they question why and they become angry at God and they don't understand the reasons. And I did that for maybe a week or two and quickly shifted to, I made my own God shift. I quickly shifted to, let your will be done. Walk with me, but let your will be done. And we'll see how this is all, going to play out.
I love that. When I think about how do you put your God shift in motion, right? So there's some that he's using these unexpected circumstances to draw your attention to, ultimately the fact that he has a better place for you. And sometimes it's a physical place,
Yeah.
sometimes it's a mindset, sometimes it's relational, sometimes it's just things that we're putting our energy into that is really not on the path that he has planned for us. But when I'm advising people as to now, what do you do in this situation, I talk about the importance of elevating God's position in your life. So, in your
Mhm.
opinion, why is it so important, especially when we're in the middle of a major shift, to elevate God's position in your life?
Well, it's an excellent question. I think the alternative is not very good, right? So if you turn away from him and you turn to drugs or you turn to self-pity or you turn to the victim mentality, that will ultimately destroy you. So I didn't like the other alternative. I like the alternative of trusting in God and trusting in the fact that he would put a lot of good people in my life to walk with me. And again, it was a long, dark journey for 4 or 5 years. And he also put a lot of good people in my kids' life because they endured this whole nightmare throughout their entire college and high school careers. And they were kids of strong faith, but they've embraced it even further. And I couldn't be prouder of the decisions and the choices that they've made. They had every excuse to choose the alternative. Whether it's self-medication, whether it's pity, whether it's victimization, but they did not. They did.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that. So, we're going to pause for a quick commercial break. And then when we come back, I'm going to allow you to share with the listeners exactly how you recommend that they can, go through this process of elevating God's position in their life. Because obviously, you were able to do that pretty successfully. So here we go. This episode is brought to you by the free guide, When God Says Shift. Inside that guide, you'll discover the 4 shifts required to follow God's plan to move you out of disruption and into a greater destiny, expectancy, and possibility. Head to GodSaysShift.com to access it now. So JD, if we have a listener that is listening in and they're actually struggling with their life's disruptions and they're struggling to put God first, what advice would you give them?
I think the first bit of advice that I would give them would be to quickly recognize that you're not going to have all the answers. Okay, you're not going to have the answers. He is not going to give you the answers until he's ready to give you the answers, and he may never give you all of the answers. You simply have to trust that what is happening in your life at this point in time is for a very good reason, and trust that he will get you to where you need to go next. And it's also an opportunity to reestablish a new identity for yourself and to become grounded in what your new purpose may be going forward. But you're not going to have all the answers. And I had to become real comfortable with that as I made multiple discoveries of deception and things that my now ex-wife hid from me. I don't have all the answers. And I've had to come to peace with the fact that I never will. I've got 90% of them. But he gave me the biggest answer that I was looking for, that stop hanging on to this broken marriage. And you had mentioned it earlier, but his gift to me was really emotional, clarity and emotional, what I call emotional justice and peace of mind, really. The rest of it doesn't matter to me, but I'm a guy that is wired to want to understand why everything happens and understand the reasons behind it. So it took me some time to get through that, to say, you're not going to have all the answers.
Yeah. And sometimes so I'm going to say the same thing, but the exact opposite. So sometimes why doesn't matter, but why matters. So in your instance, why she did what she did really doesn't matter. What really matters is the result of now what you do with the information that you have it, because that's what's going to empower you to move forward. Because, most of the time when a hurt person hurts another person, very seldom is there any logical reason as to why they did what they did. So if you're more focused on understanding why someone betrayed you, it's just going to be a dead end. The more powerful thing is to say, why did it happen? And what am I supposed to learn? And then how do I use those answers to move forward? And I think that's one of the amazing outcomes of a God shift, is that he may not give you the answers as to why and what led up to the disruption, but he will, if you're partnering with him and you're putting him first and you're actually abiding by his principles, he will give you the answers of how to move forward. Now, there may still be some uncertainty. He may not reveal the entire staircase, but I think that that's one of the reasons why it's so important for us to really make sure that we're partnering with him in the process of the shift, so that we can make sure that we get where it is that he needs us next.
Yeah, and I truly see it. I truly see it as a gift. And so I didn't focus on all the hurt and all the pain that she caused me and our kids, but rather the gift of freedom, the gift of emotional freedom, to be able to recognize that, okay, I wasn't perfect in the marriage. I was never inappropriate with other women or anything like that. But so I'm not going to sit here and claim I was a perfect husband, but I certainly wasn't the reason for the demise of our marriage. So it truly was a gift. There was a quote by Mary Oliver that I leaned on a lot. It said, someone I once loved gave me a box full of darkness. It took me many years to understand that this too was a gift.
Yeah. And what do you plan to do with that gift?
Well, again, it's about understanding where God wants me to be next. I'm right now with the book. My hope is to be able to give back to others, maybe to provide a little bit of inspiration, a little bit of encouragement. And through the sale of some of the proceeds of the book, I hope to support some military organizations that provide assistance to folks struggling with PTSD and substance abuse. But I hope to use it as a vehicle to give back. What the other part of my purpose is going forward, I haven't completely figured that out yet, but I'm going to leverage this gift, the gift of the book and the ability to get it published, to do some good for others.
I love it. I love it. That's what it's all about. My grandmother used to tell me when I was younger that the things that you go through, you don't go through them for yourself. You go through them for other people. And as a child, I was like, well, why can't they just go through it? You know what I mean? Like, if I'm going, why do I have to go through something for somebody else? Why can't that person just go through it themselves? But I do believe that, we get fresh revelation when we go through disruption. And I do believe that our God shift improves our lives so that we can improve the lives of others. So JD, before we begin to wrap up and we tell the listeners how they can learn more about you and where they can find your book, is there anything else that you would like to leave them with?
Yeah, the other thing I'd like to leave them with is, and it's something that I was challenged to really become comfortable with, is the devil is real. Okay, because I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that because I not only had my now ex-wife attack me and attack my character, but her mother got involved too. A woman that I had loved unconditionally for 23 years. But Shayna, I struggled with the concept of, could I really have laid down in bed with somebody for 25 years that was this evil? Is the devil real? And I had to seek religious counsel on that to just reground me in the fact that the devil is real and evil is real. And you see it on the news and you read about it every day, but you never think it's going to happen to you. Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of the reason why I stayed in the marriage as long as I did, is the devil had a hold on her and the devil had a hold on me, and took my strength, which was my love for my family, and turned it into a weakness. And that is why I stayed in a very, very broken marriage too long.
Right. And I think one of the things that I would like to highlight before we wrap up, you just said something that is key, is that you sought counsel.
Yeah.
In the beginning, you said you're not going to have all the answers. You can't shift without new information. And most of the times you cannot shift without support. Yeah. And so, kudos to you for recognizing that if I'm actually going to get on the other side of this healthy and whole, that I'm going to have to employ the help of someone else. And, obviously this is a Christian podcast. And so we believe that you should seek out Christian and godly counsel. So kudos to you for that. So JD, tell us, we've talked a little bit about the book. So tell us the title, a little bit more about what the book is about and where they can get it.
Yeah. And again, thank you for this wonderful opportunity, Shayna. I appreciate it. The book is called The Third Gift. The first two gifts are my kids, and the third gift was the loud disruption and from the good man above. And so it's called The Third Gift: My Dance with the Devil and Her Mother. And so it's essentially about the journey that I went through with the demise of our marriage. So it involves 9 days in psychiatric lockup, where I would later discover that she had set me up for the psychiatric lockup. Her and her mother kind of emotionally bore me out and hollowed me out and made me an empty man. But the mistake I made, and again, in addition to seeking counsel, would be, for any of your listeners that are going through difficult times, don't go through it alone. I made that mistake for 6 months, and I stayed on an island, and it damn near cost me my life.
Right.
So it's about 9 days in psychiatric lockup. It's about ultimately everything that she was accusing me of doing, I would later discover that she was doing it, from drug addiction to infidelity. And the one thing I fail to mention to people oftentimes is kind of an oh, by the way comment, is she was poisoning me with arsenic. So it's all laid out in the book. The entire journey is laid out in the book, including our 4-day alimony trial, a domestic violence trial that I endured. And we spent almost 3 years in the court system kind of working through all of this. So it was an emotional roller coaster of highs and lows from 1 minute to the next. But I never, ever questioned the man above. And I just simply said, just continue to walk with me on this journey and let your will be done. And I had to swallow an awful lot of disappointment.
And so if we're reading this book and we are actually walking step by step with you along this journey, what will we be empowered to do? What will be the result for us as the reader of the book?
what I'm hoping for, and there's an awful lot in the book. It's not an entirely dark book. There's an awful lot in there about good times that I've experienced and happiness and a lot of joy throughout the 5-year journey. And it's also about faith, how my faith became stronger, and how I leaned on the church and the sanctity of a church, even an empty church. There were days when I'd be traveling for work or whatever that I just needed some peace, and I would find whatever church, whatever denomination it was, to go and sit and pray and reflect and reground myself. And so I think folks will see that, hopefully see the importance of trusting in God and leaning on your faith in difficult times. And I'd also say being there for others, because I had a lot of folks that were there for me, complete strangers at times. I had the weirdest encounter, and God was always there with me. I had the weirdest encounter, and I talk about it in the book. Working with a colleague on the very day that I would find out about her revelation, and he had taped to his dashboard. He picked me up at a hotel for work, taped to his dashboard. There was a quote that said, "God is after something. Let no one judge you or define you but God." And so God would drop little signs at times when I needed it. And I read that and I felt some inner peace to say, okay, continue on, continue to hang in there. He's going to be with you.
Wow. And where can they get the book?
They can get the book. It's available. It's available in ebook. It's available in hardcover. It's available through Mascot Books, Amazon, Target, Walmart, any of your other major online retailers. There's also an ebook available as well.
So I will get one of the exact links from JD, and I will put it in the show notes so that you who are listening, if you want to grab the third gift, A Dance with the Devil and Her Mother, I love that title, then all you'll have to do is just click that link and it'll take you straight to one of those pages. So JD, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you being willing to be open and honest and transparent and give us a peek inside of your journey and show us that, you know, that there is great destiny on the other side of disruption. So thank you so much for being here today.
You're very welcome. And I also wanted to take the opportunity to thank Nate Bailey for helping to connect me with you. So thank you, Nate. And thank you, Shayna.
Thank you, Nate. And everyone, thank you so much for listening to this episode. I pray that you have a great day. Bye-bye.